Hi, I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, federal regulators weigh in on restarting the San Onofre nuclear plant. A preliminary report is out tonight. And the president's new budget includes funds for the San Ysidro port of entry. What happens next is up to Congress.
I'm Peggy Pico. Activists rally in San Diego and Washington, D.C. today in support of immigration reform. We'll talk with supporters and opponents of reform in just a moment. Also ahead, are you a handheld or hands-free driver? I'll have the surprising results of San Diegans' distracted driving habits.
And we'll show you a program helping young and old bridge the generation gap with athletics and fun. KPBS Evening Edition starts now.
KPBS Evening Edition is made possible by Joan and Erwin Jacobs and by
Hello, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Federal regulators have made a preliminary ruling tonight on restarting the San Onofre nuclear plant. The staff of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission says there's no significant safety risk for a restart at 70% power. Southern California Edison wants to restart the Unit 2 reactor by June 1st. San Onofre has been offline since January 2012 because of problems with tubes in its steam generators. State Senator Barbara Boxer has demanded a complete investigation of the trouble before a restart is approved. Emergency officials in San Diego County are disputing a government report predicting gridlock if there is an emergency at San Onofre. The Government Accountability Office says people outside the plant's official 10-mile evacuation zone could panic and flee when they don't need to, creating traffic jams. But the County Office of Emergency Services says its plan covers the whole county and was used during the 2007 wildfires. The company behind a proposed power project near Mission Trails Park is asking for a one-year suspension of its application. Last month, the Public Utilities Commission ruled against an agreement for San Diego Gas and Electric to buy power from the Quail Brush project. The suspension request says the builder still wants or plans to move forward with the plant, but wants to do more study of the market. Tomorrow, the Senate plans an initial vote on debating gun control legislation. Tonight, two senators say they've made a bipartisan deal on one element: expanded background checks. The compromise would require background checks at gun shows and internet sales. Pennsylvania Republican Patrick Toomey says background checks are not gun control, just common sense.
Criminals and the dangerously mentally ill shouldn't have guns. I don't know anyone who disagrees with that premise, from either political party or whatever folks' views might be on broader gun rights issues.
The National Rifle Association says background checks won't prevent school shootings and called on the White House to fix the mental health system and stop gang violence. The White House says today's deal is progress. President Obama sent a budget to Congress this afternoon. It's a $3.8 trillion spending plan. He says it meets Republicans more than halfway. With proposals to trim Social Security and Medicare, the budget also calls for $100 billion in defense cuts over 10 years. It would also raise taxes on the rich by $580 billion. The combination of cuts and tax increases are angering lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. PBS NewsHour will have more reaction to the president's budget tonight at 7. One budget item of local interest, $226 million for the San Ysidro port of entry. It's the busiest border crossing in the world. The first phase of an expansion project is underway, but the next phase hasn't been funded yet. San Diego's Democratic congressional delegation have been lobbying for money to finish the job. They say it's critical for the region's economic security. A Senate proposal for immigration reform is expected any day now, and tonight a source in Washington says the bill calls for expanded surveillance of the border with Mexico. The source tells the Associated Press it aims to catch more border crossers in high-risk areas, provides an electronic exit system at airports and seaports, and calls on employers to adopt systems like E-Verify to check workers' legal status. Peggy Pico takes a closer look at the possible impact of immigration reform in San Diego.
The bipartisan group of senators called the Gang of Eight hope to introduce a comprehensive immigration reform bill by Friday. Meanwhile, in San Diego, the city council unanimously passed a resolution in support of immigration reform. Joining me with more on the local impact of the reform is Pedro Rios, director of American Friends Service Committee, and Ted Hilton, founder of Taxpayer Revolution. Thank you both for being here. Pedro, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are referring to this as a sweeping reform. Give us some of the highlights that we could expect to see in this bill.
Yeah, so we're hoping that it will include a pathway to citizenship. That's the biggest piece of the bill that will probably be seen on both sides of Congress. And we will also see language specific to the border, which will address port of entry issues, how to reduce the time, how to make the port infrastructure much more efficient. And we're hoping that there will also be language in terms of holding agents accountable for actions that perhaps should be investigated.
I know there is some border security issues addressed in the bill. Ted, Republican Senator John McCain is one of the so-called Gang of Eight, and he's working on this bill. And what he said is there's going to be a lot of unhappy people because nobody got, or I should say everybody didn't get exactly what they wanted. What would you like to see come out of this bill?
I think they need to move to a piecemeal approach and take it on a case-by-case basis. So,
for instance, different subjects.
E-Verify by itself, reform the 1965 legislation, the family reunification, if they're high-tech workers. I think that's how they should do the whole bill. And I think they're going to be in the same problem that they were in 2007, where they could not come to terms to pass that
because
bill.
It's too big a sweeping.
That's
you think
right.
it could be tackled in little
right.
bits and pieces. Pedro, you were at the city council meeting yesterday when they did this sort of ceremonial resolution to show support of immigration reform. Newest estimates show there are nearly 200,000 immigrants in San Diego County. If this reform goes through as is, rather than the piecemeal, what kind of changes could we see here?
We probably will see much more participation from community members who will feel supported, and that's why the importance of a resolution. It provides support from the city to say, we acknowledge that you are here in our communities, you're contributing, and so why not pass a resolution that ensures that they are able then to contribute in different ways openly. So we're hoping that they would then are able then to acquire the documentation they need to adjust their status whenever those rules are acknowledged and publicized.
So maybe being a little bit more visible. But when it comes to visibility, Ted, it's estimated that half of the million agricultural workers,
right.
so about 500,000 in the U.S.,
right.
are in the country illegally.
Right.
And there is a guest worker portion of this bill
yes.
that is talking about giving about 200,000 of these workers
right.
Work visas. What
right.
do you think about that?
Totally opposed to it. I think we just have not utilized our own people. We have prisoners who could be doing this, juvenile offenders. We have welfare recipients that could be doing this. I think the Department of Social Services needs to become an employment agency. You know, we just can't have 4.5 million people across the United States saying they cannot find jobs. Those have to be channeled into any type of work.
Just to play a little bit of devil's advocate, let's say that happens. Let's say the immigrants that are here say, okay, fine, we're not going to work, do the field work, and we're going to have these other people do it. What happens to the immigrants that are here?
Well, they're going to have to voluntarily leave if they don't have any work. So that's why you have E-Verify. So you make sure that you have a legal workforce, and then they're just going to have to voluntarily leave.
Mm-hmm. I know there's a lot to that that's underneath that, and who left and who didn't back in the day.
Right.
But I know the Republicans say that's not really practical. Do you think it would really happen?
If you require Americans to do these types of jobs, it will become the situation. They just won't be able to continue here. That's it.
Okay. Now, a similar immigration reform movement back in 2007, as you mentioned, didn't pass. Why do you think this one will pass?
I think that the conditions are there for it. We are now seeing politicians who in the past were opposed to a pathway to citizenship who are now in favor of one. There's much more dialogue and discussions taking place with communities. There are proposals that are being offered from communities that politicians are looking into. So I think that all the conditions are set for it. And if we don't pass one now, we're going to find ourselves in much bigger problems in the near future.
And how about you, Ted? Why do you think this one will or will not pass?
As I said, the comprehensive approach probably will not work in the conference committee. They will not come to terms, and I think that's when they're going to realize that they're finally going to have to do this on a piecemeal approach.
Okay,
Absolutely.
well, we have a lot more information on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you both for talking with us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
1,000 needy high school students could get free bus passes under a pilot program approved by San Diego Unified board members. Students from City Heights were at last night's meeting to support the plan. The district will pitch in $150,000 for the passes to be handed out at Hoover, Crawford, Lincoln, and San Diego high schools next year. Monthly passes can be a major expense for parents earning minimum wage.
She would probably have to decide between either buying my sister some shoes or giving me a bus pass for school.
The plan is contingent on the city providing $200,000 as well. Mayor Filner says it will be part of his budget being released next week. Zero tolerance is falling out of fashion, apparently, in education and law enforcement. Last year, California voters softened the three strikes law. Schools are working to limit suspensions, but a tough Clinton-era housing rule remains. Tonight, a look at what happens to one family when zero tolerance in Section 8 pushes them to the brink of homelessness. The story from Speak City Heights reporter Megan Burks in partnership with Voice of San Diego photographer Sam Hodson.
Yeah, as you can see, I'm used to living in a small space now.
Last year, Cheryl Canson and her two youngest children moved into a small bedroom in her oldest daughter's Encanto home. The two-bedroom duplex was cramped. Tensions ran high.
I came from a 5-bedroom where all my kids have their own room. They had all this room, huge backyard, upstairs, downstairs.
In late 2011, Canson lost that home because of a federal zero-tolerance policy for Section 8 tenants. The rule puts the entire family out when one person, even a guest, commits a crime or uses drugs on the premises.
And when my son had a psychotic episode and tossed his baby, we got evicted off Section 8 and traumatized all over again, and family's traumatized.
This is my story. This is my song.
My child is incarcerated. They charged him with mayhem and torture and child abuse. He's going to get worse. He's definitely not going to get any better.
For Canson, losing her Section 8 voucher was the last domino to fall in a wayward track laid by a family history of mental illness. Her mother had schizophrenia, and each of her 5 children have developed the disorder or precursors to it. Canson says that's what fueled the violent behavior that landed both of her eldest sons in jail.
It's very damaging when something happens to one person in the family. It affects the whole family.
Canson is fighting for a different outcome for her teenage daughter and 8-year-old son, but providing a stable environment has been difficult. Living in close quarters back in Encanto was contentious. Her daughter was hospitalized 3 times and was diagnosed with schizophrenia during that time.
It's been like a domino effect to where we're here now at a shelter.
In March, Cheryl and her kids moved into a room at the St. Vincent de Paul Village in downtown San Diego.
And the first night, I just had uncontrollable crying. I just couldn't help myself. I was just tears rolling down my face. It was just another change that I really didn't expect.
Their space at the homeless shelter isn't much bigger than before, but they have a locking door now and access to on-site mental health professionals.
I'm already thinking of things that we need to bring in here to, get us engaged as a family. We're in a strange place, but we're not strangers to God. So
pray that God watches over my brothers while they're away from me, and just keep me strong through this hard time that I'm going through right now.
San Diego Housing Commission manages the city's Section 8 program. We contacted them for this story, but they declined an interview. In a statement, they said tenants can appeal their termination from the program. You can find more on our website at kpbs.org. Home prices continue to rebound in San Diego. The Association of Realtors says the median price for a single-family home went up 5% last month. Prices for condos and townhomes went up even more, a 14% increase in March. The association says it expects the trend to continue thanks to low interest rates. U.S. Postal Service will keep delivering mail 6 days a week. Today, the agency backed down on a plan to stop Saturday service. Congress left it no choice. The spending bill passed last month doesn't allow a schedule change. Now the Postal Service could look at renegotiating union contracts and raising its prices. California lawmakers are considering a bill to strip tax exemptions from youth groups such as the Boy Scouts. The Youth Equality Act is aimed at groups banning gay, transgender, or atheist members. Those groups would lose their tax-exempt status. The measure is intended to pressure the Boy Scouts to lift their ban. It cleared its first committee vote in Sacramento today. The logic behind banning soda seems simple enough. Get rid of supersized sugary drinks, people will consume less, and public health may improve. Or maybe not. Researchers at UC San Diego tested the theory and found it could backfire.
They actually chose to buy more soda than when the original menus with the regular small, medium, and large sizes were offered. So that suggests that if businesses are offering bundles, people may actually buy more soda than they were prior to any ban going into place at all.
The research could help public health agencies better understand the consequences of these kinds of bans. Salk Institute is getting more than $2 million from a rare auction in New York. Christie's auctioned off a written letter by scientist Francis Crick, one of the men who discovered DNA 60 years ago. The handwritten letter seen here sold for more than $5 million. The Salk Institute is getting half the proceeds. Crick died in La Jolla in 2004. His family is selling some of his letters and other items to benefit scientific research. Tomorrow, they will auction off Crick's 1962 Nobel Prize medal. It's expected to fetch more than $500,000. Legislation is trying its best to catch up with technology. Peggy Pico has more on a new survey about the leading cause of distracted driving crashes in California.
Nationwide, distracted drivers account for more than 3,000 deaths and 400,000 injuries. In San Diego County, researchers of the Adult Cell Phone Survey looked at the habits of local drivers who use cell phones behind the wheel. The results? More than half, or 56%, report driving with a handheld phone, whilst 92% say they drive with a hands-free phone. Here with more on what every San Diego driver needs to know about distracted driving are Dr. Linda Hill, lead researcher of the survey, and California Highway Patrol Officer Mary Bailey. Thank you both for being here.
You're welcome.
As we get started, I want to let people know there were more than 700 San Diegans who took part in this survey, mostly married women, I understand. And there were some rather startling results. For instance, of the 261 respondents with children under age 11, 65% said they talk on the cell phone while driving with their child in the car. And more than a third, 36%, said they text while driving. Now, Dr. Hill, how do these numbers translate into real-life consequences?
Well, we were really startled and worried about these numbers. What this means is that people are putting both themselves and their kids at risk. And talking distracted is the same as driving under the influence of alcohol. So they're increasing their crash risk by using a phone 4 times and texting 16 times. So that's translating into more injuries and deaths.
Are the ERs seeing it? Are you seeing where these kind of more accidents than before, or more, I should say, injuries than before?
Well, we know that injuries are the leading cause of death to age 45, and motor vehicle crashes are the leading cause of injuries in that category.
So already a bad situation and making it work. Officer Bailey, distracted driving, let's define that a little bit more. It's not just cell phone use.
It is not just cell phone use. It's anything from using your GPS in your vehicle to eating, drinking, putting on your makeup, changing the radio station, even taking care of your kids in the back seat and picking up their toys that may have dropped.
Okay, I'm going to play a little bit of driver's devil's advocate here. San Diegans spend at least 1 to 2 hours a day on average in the car. Surely they're not expected to never eat, talk to their kids, listen to the radio, sing to the radio. What sort of parameters are there in determining when an officer's out there who's driving distracted and who's just taking a sip of their Coke?
We're looking at what your car does. So we notice that you're distracted because there's something that brought our eye to your vehicle, whether or not you're going slower than the rest of traffic, you're weaving, you're cutting people off. We notice those things like not stopping at a stop sign. If you sit at a stop sign and watch the people that run it, most of them are on their cell phone at the same time.
So I like that. You're watching the vehicle, not necessarily what's going on inside the car. Was there any difference between, or do you find any difference between people who are hands-free or people who are actually using the cell?
People are still just as distracted with a hands-free device because they get involved in their conversation and they oftentimes forget to exit the freeway or they forget to change lanes when they need to.
So they didn't seem to matter in the survey, right? Dr. Hale, there were some trends you picked up, and was that one of them?
Well, the concern is that hands-free and hands-held, it's the same risk. So even if people think that they're being safer, in fact, they're not. The message is, it's like driving under the influence of alcohol. You don't want to drive, even with a low amount of alcohol, you don't want to drive distracted. It's the same.
One of the surprising things I found in that survey were that people felt obligated, especially when it was a phone. About a third of the people felt obligated to pick up the phone when it was their employer.
Yes, something's changed in our society that we feel we have to be available all the time. And about a third of people said that they felt they had to take these calls. So I really think this is a message to both employees and employers. This isn't a good thing. We want to keep our workforce safe, have a policy and enforce it.
Yeah, and absolutely keep it safe, and you don't want any liability either if you're the person doing the calling. I'm going to ask this of both of you, but I want to start with you, Officer Bailey. What would be your top advice for people in driving? Let's say you have kids or a dog and trying to stay distraction-free.
Good drivers just drive, and that's what I like to tell people is you don't worry about anything else inside your car, you worry about what other people are doing in other vehicles around you.
And how about you, Dr. Hill, coming from sort of after seeing this data, what would your top advice be?
I'd view this like any other addiction. 92% of people told us they knew that texting wasn't a good thing. And when I talk to the smokers in my clinic, they know smoking's not a good thing. So they're still engaged in the behavior. So we're going to have to work on what can you do to overcome that. We're going to have to work hard.
All right, I want to let people know that they can absolutely find out more about this, the tips, the survey on our website, kpbs.org. Dr. Hill and Officer Bailey, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I'm Gwen Eiffel. On the next News Hour, First Lady Michelle Obama visits Chicago to address gun violence. That's Wednesday on the PBS News Hour.
Bridging generations with athletics and fun is what the Intergenerational Games is all about. It pairs older adults with third graders to compete in games while learning about the value of proper nutrition.
So do you think the older you get, the smarter you get? Okay, you want to see some really smart people? Turn around and look at your new friends back there.
60 third graders from Cook Elementary School were joined by 60 adult volunteers at the Olympic Training Center in Chula Vista.
But I still had 90% to show the world what I can do.
Before the competition, they got a pep talk from Paralympic sprinter Blake Leeper, who won silver and bronze in the Summer Olympics.
Enjoy life each and every day. Being here is a blessing. Enjoy it, live it, and let's have fun today, okay, guys? All right.
It was then off to the field of play, where each kid was paired with an adult from the County Health Agency's intergenerational program, from hula hoop, paddleball, and the ultimate frisbee throw.
Go ahead, Ethan. Oh!
It's a chance for all generations to share and have a great time doing it.
I almost got the cameraman.
This pair literally hit it off from the moment they met. 73-year-old Hoagie Carmichael and 9-year-old Ethan Hermosia made the rounds together. Turns out Ethan has a knack for playing soccer.
You are good.
This event has been going on for more than a decade, and every participant has their picture taken and receives a medal for participating.
And you know, with each kid that you participate with, you remember a little something about them.
Carmichael has been involved with 10 of these events and has the medals and pictures to remind him there were years he had to work with multiple kids because they didn't have enough adults. The kids also learned about eating healthy and getting more fruits and veggies in their diet. But the best part was seeing how age doesn't limit your abilities. It enhances it if you're willing to share.
The County Health Agency hopes to inspire more intergenerational programs like that. It says older adults and young children benefit from sharing their unique strengths. San Diego weather, clouds are moving back into our forecast. Look for fog along the coast. We might even see some sprinkles by Sunday. For the inland valleys, partly sunny tomorrow, making way for clouds. Mountain temperatures will be in the low to mid-60s for the next few days. Plenty of sunshine in the desert with temperatures near 90. You can find tonight's stories and download the KPBS app all on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.